Hello, my name is Tim Marr. For as long as I can remember, I've been interested in learning about my family's heritage. Now, when I was about 6 years old, I recalled going to a family party and overhearing the adults talk about my family's relation to a Titanic survivor. Now, this interested me instantly. The survivor's name was Mary McGovern, and she was my first cousin 3 times removed. She was born in 1890 in Clarbally, County Cavan, Ireland, and her parents were Bridget and John McGovern. At this same time, Ireland was in conflict with Great Britain. For almost half a century, from the early 1870s to the end of World War I, Home Rule was both the single most dominant feature in Irish political life and a major influence within British politics. Home Rule was an Irish movement to repeal the Act of Union 1800, which merged Ireland and Great Britain into one united kingdom. The Irish had no interest in being part of the United Kingdom anymore and wanted to rule themselves. To find out more about Mary's early life, I interviewed my grandmother, Geraldine Krawick.
I'm Geraldine Krawick. I was born Geraldine O'Brien, and my mother was Mary McGovern. Now, my mother was first cousin to the Mary McGovern who survived the Titanic. I know that they both came to the United States for basically the same reason. They were brought up on small farms, raising the sheep and the oats. Large families, small farms, and not much money. To begin with, my mother and I would Mary McGovern. They had to help in the fields. They didn't get very much schooling because they were pulled out of school constantly in order to help in the fields. The help was desperately needed. You didn't hire outside of the family.
Mary booked her third-class ticket in Ballinamore County, Leitrim, the nearest big town. The ticket cost her £7, which is over $800 today. When the day came for Mary to depart, upon saying farewell, her mother gave her a little of St. Mogg's earth and said goodbye. Local people of Cavan have the firm belief that a little earth from the grave of St. Mogg will, if carried with you, protect you from death by drowning or fire. To find out some more information on the Titanic, I traveled to the Titanic Historical Museum in Springfield, Massachusetts, and interviewed Barbara Kamuta, sister of the Historical Society founder, Edward Kamuta.
This shows you the route of the Titanic from Southampton to Cherbourg to Queenstown, and it almost completed the voyage, almost equal to Halifax, which is why the cable ships came from Halifax to pick up the bodies. Now this is the crew list, and just the crew list. It shows who was working on the Titanic and what they did. And all those in bold print survived. What amazed me was, if you look at those that survived, they were from all different parts of the ship. It wasn't just first or second class crewmen. It was trimmers. Even the lookout was saved. Ships in those days were built in threes from the same plan, so they were almost exactly alike. Olympic was actually the first to be built. Titanic was the second, and Britannic was the third. Britannic was the only one who never had paying passengers on board because the war broke out just as she was going into service, and she was immediately transferred into a hospital ship. She saw service for 2 or 3 years, was going to Greece to pick up the wounded, hit a mine in the Aegean Sea and sank. Well, the Olympic saw service till 1935 when she was scrapped because they needed the steel for the war. These photos show the Titanic being built. This one here shows Titanic being built along with her sister ship Olympic. Because ships were built in threes, they bought in bulk for all of the ships, which is why nothing on Titanic said Titanic. These basically are the same patterns that were on Titanic and her sisters. Even the silverware would have the white Star Line logo, but it would not say the name of the ship.
The third class consisted mostly of immigrants moving to the United States and Canada for a better life. Before boarding the vessel, third-class passengers were given a health inspection to check for disease, lice, and other infectious infections. third-class passengers had a simple berth which was shared with other passengers, along with a smoking room and general room. Of the three classes, the third class experienced the greatest loss of life after the Titanic sank. Here's an excerpt of an interview Mary gave 40 years after the Titanic sank.
We left Cove on Wednesday for New York, and everything was grand. I was fast asleep in my cabin, a 3-tiered affair, which I shared with 2 others from Virginia County Cabin. On Sunday night, we were awoken and thrown out of our bunks by the shock of the collision. But we were not at all afraid, for everything was silent. The lights burned brightly. In fact, we had no cause for alarm. But outside our door, we heard a rising clamor, and we went out and found the passages and corridors full of running people. That was about midnight, if I remember right, and we went up onto the boat deck, pushing our way through lines of linked sailors and armed men who were shouting, "Women and children first!" Somebody told us to go back for our life belts, and with difficulty, we went back to our cabin, found them over the door, put them on, and fought our way back again. We went from lifeboat to lifeboat, all of which were packed, and which one by one were being lowered away down into the water. I knew how near the water was, for I'd actually seen it washing down the corridor as we went down for our life belts. We were shoved into the last of the lifeboats to leave, and had to watch drowning men being beaten with oars to prevent them from overturning the boats we were in. We watched the lights go out one by one and the huge ship sliding to her grave on the starlit water, and saw the last, long, slow death struggle of the pride of Queen's Island, the greatest and newest ship in the world. Next day we were picked up by the Carpathia. I am one of 712 people saved out of a total of 2,201. Sewn in my clothes from the time I left my native Corlo, here in Cavan, I have carried a little locket of St. Mogue's clay. I still have it hidden in the rafters of my home.
I know they both came into New York. Both were met by family, because I think you had to have family then. Mary McGovern was met by a cousin who was a McGovern. My mother was met by an uncle who was a McGovern. They spent their time doing a lot of looking around New York, trying to find jobs. There weren't any jobs. Everything said Irish need not apply. And that was a very hurtful thing, and they ended up being domestics.
After working as a domestic in New York for a few years, Mary decided to return home and went back to Ireland.
I would imagine Mary McGovern was very continually upset by what had happened on the Titanic, and was seeking family, and went home knowing that she had her cousin, a distant cousin, Peter McGovern, and many other relatives in the area all ready to meet her, and moved up to Bon Boy, which was only a short distance away, and lived there the rest of her life.
In 1921, Mary married Peter McGovern. Together they had 2 children, a son, Hugh, and a daughter, Mary Kate. Mary McGovern died on August 24, 1957. Through the production of this documentary, I have found new information about Mary McGovern and the life that she led. But more importantly, I have come to realize the importance of family. Mary left Ireland with her family's support. She was met by a cousin upon her arrival in America, and was welcomed back by family when she returned to Ireland. To me, this shows that no matter how much the course of your life may change, family will always be there to support you through the good and the bad.